it was 2004, and I was really just not satisfied with what I was reading about the war, and in particular about the soldiers. I felt that, in every paper there would be a list of the soldiers who died, which is their names, the town they were from, and their age. And sometimes there would be a photograph, and I felt very disconnected from what was happening and from the people who were serving. And when I did find out any information about them or who they were, why they joined, it was once they had been killed. So I really didn't know what I wanted to do at first, but I started getting subscriptions to all sorts of magazines and newspapers, one of which was the Army Times. And I was reading that for a few months, I think, until I read an article about Sergeant Yuze. And he had just won the Army Times Soldier of the Year award, in part for being one of the most successful recruiters in the United States. And then there was a picture of him, leading, basically, like running with a group of high school students who were his new recruits. And they were so young. And I thought, wow, I want to know why he's so successful, who these kids are before they join, before they become soldiers, while they're still in high school. And so I gave him a call. He got on the phone. I told him that I was interested in doing a documentary film. We spoke for a few minutes. He agreed, and then I said, that's great. And, we hung up, and then about 10 seconds later, the phone rang again, and he said, well, this is going to have to actually go through Army chain of command. And I said, no, I figured that. And then a process began really for me to get access and get approval from the Army. It actually was remarkably, I don't want to say easy, but uncomplicated, in the sense that they just asked me to write a letter. I did. I wrote a very short letter just explaining what I wanted to do, that I wanted to follow Sergeant Yuze and a few of his recruits. They did a background check on me, which I learned later after people, which people called me and told me that they received phone calls from the Army, and that was it. And then I signed a contract with them, which I have to say was one of the most filmmaker-friendly contracts I've ever received. And it really gave us an enormous amount of flexibility and control. And it ultimately became, I think, it was based on my relationship more than anything, because the Army gave me the approval, but at any point, any of the soldiers or the recruiters could have said, no, we don't want to do this anymore. And but I think I built a good relationship with them. And then also when I was at basic training, again, it was at the discretion of the drill sergeants and the public affairs people there at the different bases to decide, how long we would stay, what we would do. And so that's what happened. I really, he had a number of when I arrived, there were a few recruits who were already shipping off to basic training. And so there were a number of kids, and they were in the group that would be there for another year before they shipped. So that was one reason. It really just happened. I was looking, they all had different reasons for joining, and to me that was interesting, and their backgrounds are all varied, and so it just really fell into place that way, and I found them all very compelling. If anything, it opens things up, because you really specifically to this film, that they're at such a specific point in their life. Who can't remember being 17, and college seems so distant, and leaving home, and kind of the vulnerability and fear and excitement of that age, and everything is in front of you. And I think that was what was interesting. I think it was, to be with them before they actually went through basic training and went from civilian to soldiers and made that transition. I wanted to be with them at the point in their life before that, so we could know who they were before and why they made those decisions. it was incredible. It was really incredible. I think that was it was really unbelievable on so many different levels. But one, it is this incredibly stimulating experience, which I didn't really anticipate. But it would take me like a week to get over, a week to be there because you're just so charged after being there. But it was, it's the first few weeks of boot camp are the kids go through a tremendous amount. It's really that transition from civilian to soldier, where it's the total control period where they can't do anything, they can't read anything, and it's the very stereotypical scene of the sergeants yelling at you and being treated inhumanely, and then that slowly changes. I think they have the red and blue and then white phase of boot camp, which they go through, and the red is the really intense one. But boot camp was, what they go through, and the different training. It seems so distant now, my God, but the different trainings. For the infantry training is very different than just combat support, and so Fort Benning and Fort Jackson all have, are very, very different, and what the training is very different. But it was a very intense experience, and seeing what they went through was incredible. So, yeah.
Ultimately, did you feel like you keep calling them kids, but
yeah.
did you feel like they knew what they were getting themselves into?
No, I think that, something that many of them said afterwards is, I don't think some do, and others, for some it was not as a difficult experience as for others, and then for others it's a very difficult experience, and I don't think you can really understand what boot camp is like until you actually go through it. So no, I think, one thing that one character said in interviews that, I think Matt says this in an interview that he didn't know, that he just went and did it, and he didn't know what he was going to experience. I think that it's difficult at 17 and 18 to really understand, as Bobby's father says, to understand what war is, to understand what you're getting yourself into. I mean, we have these ideas that are based on movies, that are based on things that are just very different than the reality. So.